where we're putting the garbage?
They're in the far right
Oh,
corner.
okay. Over there?
Yes, in the.
Sorry.
Excuse me, I would like everybody to find something to eat and take a seat. Thank you. I would like to ask everybody to get what they like to eat and find something. Thank you. Excuse me, there are many empty seats here. Would you like to sit down, have something to drink and eat, and find a seat? We will begin in just a minute.
Is this okay? Can you borrow your corner?
Yes.
Do you want me to move?
Let me introduce myself. My name is Annie Suchecki, and I was Jake's kindergarten teacher. In kindergarten, we do at the beginning of every day, ask the children to turn and talk to their neighbor. So I will give you 5 minutes. I'd like you to turn and talk to your neighbor. Say how you knew Jake or a story about Jake. All right?
But we all know each other, so it's exactly.
Lifted it all.
Big and strong.
Yeah, and came there right away. Like, I was like, wow.
Well,
Exactly. And she was like, well, yeah. And I would, so that was one of my favorite stories from him. Like, whenever I try to talk about it with people, I say, let me tell you what it was like. Like, who does that?
I remember Jake Haldeman and he working cookie in his bedroom at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning when he got the fire alarm. And
I always was impressed with that. That's the scariest stuff.
he wanted to be fireman himself.
He would have been great at that too. Because he's fearless. That's why he went down and did that for Becky, that fearlessness. That's one of your favorite stories is him as a fireman. Yeah.
And also the other story, when he went to Africa.
Oh, yeah.
I have a picture of him, I can't find it now. Nose to nose with Goliath. It just not
Oh,
and there was no similar supply. All the men who were working there were neighbors who would play soccer with them. So now they're like, they did not go.
That's so funny. And with the beard and the hair, the lion thought, "Oh, you look like me. I'm not afraid.
At 18, 19.
Can I get you something? Like, do you want this? Right. I'm just thinking, some kind of hoagie. You could pick the bread. That might help. No. Tasty cake. Tasty cake. I'll get it. You want some fruit? There's a lovely bowl of fruit there. Fruit? Yeah.
I remember the school very well.
Oh, did you? I've never been here. I mean, I heard about it all those years the kids were here. What a beautiful place. And to think his kindergarten teachers were there.
If everybody will give me your attention, I would like to say a few words. I would like to say a few words about Jake, and then we have a couple speakers who will also talk about Jake. If there is time, I will open the floor to others, but we will be done by 2:30. Jake was in my kindergarten class 26 years ago, and he came back into my life as an assistant here at SRB. I was fortunate to keep up with Jake and his parents in the years in between. As a 5-year-old, you could tell exactly what Jake was to become. Even then, he was passionate about sports. He was passionate about nature. And I like to think not only his family, but SRB had something to do with that. He was passionate about his family and friends. He had the heart of a lion, and he was empathetic towards all things. Jake was a study in contrasts. A big man who liked bird watching. Not just eagles, but sandpipers on the beach. I watched Jake hold day-old chicks in his hands and share them with children. I was witness to Jake as a child. Here there were contrasts as well. I saw Jake in a dance recital. I saw Jake in a Shakespeare play, right, Meg? I saw Jake making art. Jake credited me with giving him the confidence to make art. And that's a credit any teacher likes to hear. Jake was a teaching assistant during the first year of COVID. It wasn't an easy job. I was witness to Jake interact with tiny children. He shared their joys and wiped their tears. Jake often stepped forward to help without ever being asked. And he knew how to involve the children and how to get things done. Jake was an active participant, and we often shared ideas. He was passionate as he grew up in civil rights and social justice. He volunteered to make a movie with 5-year-olds about 4 5-year-olds on the anniversary of Black Lives Matter. Can you imagine? I love you, Jake. I'm going to turn this over to Jake's uncle and his cousin Sam.
Thanks, Amy. We're going to tag team this. I'll go first. I am Jake's uncle Andrew, Wendy's brother. I know the invitation said Eagles garb, but as a Giants fan, I had to kind of compromise on wearing green and blue shirt. It's the closest I would get, or will ever get to Eagles garb. I held Jake for the first time when he was just a day or so old. I didn't hold him for that long because my arms got really tired. He was there. But it was just the first of many ways I connected to him. Physically, emotionally, politically, humorously. We got along. Uncle and nephew, yeah. But more than that, he confided in me, would call me to chat, usually leading with, "Hey, Uncle." I think because I love my sister the way I do, I loved her children with the same fervor. Zach and Jake are part of me and my soul. And along with my sons Caleb and Sam, they created a quartet of boys that defined holidays and special moments for more than 3 decades. I'd be lying if I said all those moments were out of a Hallmark movie. And you all know what I mean. But if truth be told, the most memorable ones weren't usually scripted. There were a lot of happy times. Debbie and I shared so many Thanksgivings, holidays, and birthday get-togethers in our home, meals, and the games and the laughter. Once we were playing apples to apples, you know the game. The boys were very young, much younger, and somehow Jake played a card leading Zach to challenge him that you can't name 3 Jewish people. Without missing a beat, Jacob replied, Jesus, Moses, and Grandma Bernice. True story. We know Jacob liked to travel and explore. It's a quality he developed early. I'm pretty sure most people here today, and many watching on the live stream, took part in at least one of Jake's journeys. Debbie and I had the pleasure of watching Jake attack a pile of the hottest chicken wings known to mankind at the Chicken or the Egg on Long Beach Island. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. We got to watch him push Disney World to its limits when then Pop-Up took us all to Florida in 2001. And I got to share a special night at Fenway Park in 2007 with Jake and Sam, when Grandpa arranged for us to attend Game 2 of that World Series, won, of course, by Jake and Sam's beloved Red Sox, shirt from that day. Happy cousins, they were all dressed in gear like this, and they even got on the Jumbotron mid-game. I'm not up here today to fill in all the blanks about Jake's life or even try to tell everyone how special Jake was. Everyone here has a story, a memory, a unique moment shared with Jake, created by Jake. And right now, I just want to take a brief pause and everyone just remember one moment you shared with Jake. I guess most of those moments made you smile, laugh. He was a unique person because of the way he attacked life, whether it was playing baseball or football, volunteering or helping people in need. Jake did things full throttle and with all the passion and motivation that boy could muster. And he continued to do so throughout his life, which makes his absence really fucking hard to take. He wasn't perfect. None of us are. He had issues. But a purer soul you won't find. They don't make people kinder or more considerate or more compassionate towards friends and strangers alike. He's remembered here today by family and friends, some knew him as a very young boy, some who met him in college, some as an adult. Regardless of when you met him or how you met him, clearly none of us will ever forget him.
I have some bullet points rather than a full breakdown, so improv me. When I was thinking about what I wanted to say when I came up here, I was kind of trying to find the parts of myself that I most valued in Jake. And I think a few of them were just kind of how well he knew himself and relentlessly and fearlessly pursued all the things he was deeply passionate about. And so I was trying to how to measure his life, and I think a lot of it's by how much you live in accordance to your own values. And I felt like he was deeply in alignment with himself in that regard. As covered on my dad, he had an amazing experience where he got to go to the Super Bowl and see his beloved Eagles. He had a chance to not only work with the Red Sox and work within the MLB for a summer, but also we had the chance to go to the World Series together. And the story that I remember from that was we were sitting there watching the game, and Kurt Schilling was pitching, and someone was scooting by us and accidentally knocks a glass of red wine onto his white socks, and all of a sudden he gets a very Red Sox. We were joking for the next 3 hours that he had a bloody sock, and it was good fortune for Kurt Schilling, and they did win the game. I also had an experience where I got to visit him when he was up in the Southwest, and we went on a little week-long vacation throughout Oregon and Seattle, and I got to see how at peace he was up there, how much he loved the water, how much he loved being in nature. I find it just so amazing how deeply knowledgeable he was about how to find oysters, how to spot fungi in the middle of underneath a tree and things like that. He just had that awareness and that kind of symbiosis with the living world, and that was so it translated so apparently to the way he interacted with people, and he just felt so in tune with kind of the spirit of all living organisms. And I also think one thing that I so deeply I don't know, I don't really have the word for it, but just Ashley's presence in his life in this last year or two, just you clearly brought him so much joy. And I just think to see him so happy in love was, yeah, I think that's something that every member of my family so deeply appreciated. And again, you could tell he was just kind of locked in with you, and it just felt like he had an annoying presence. And it was just something I really I really admired as we spent time together, and also just all the posts on Instagram and all the ways he would go out of his way to figure out how to bring more joy to your lives together. He also did a bunch of cool shit that's gonna kill you, which is he played football relentlessly and he loved it. He snowboarded and he loved it. He ran into burning buildings because he cared that much about people and taking care of people and saving lives. He volunteered in underdeveloped countries without tons of medical services. He was a fearless person, and that's a trait that I love. He was stupid and silly and fearless in the way he lived his life in so many ways. I think personally that's something I always try to learn from and aspire to. And yeah, as my father said, he was so concerned with the well-being of other people and so wise as to the internal workings of how the people in his lives were, and just who we all were. I felt like he did see us so very clearly. So essentially, I don't think you can judge a life by how long it was, but really by how much joy you had and how much you were able to experience what mattered to you. And I think he had a lot of really good Sports Center highlights. And I think a lot of these pictures are from kind of like, that's his top 10 out there. So yeah, I'm gonna miss my cousin.
John?
I'm coming to.
Good.
Oh, wait a minute.
John and Eileen Baker.
So, like Jake's cousin, I just kind of have some bullet points here. And Eileen said to me yesterday, hey, we're gonna say something, and can you think of something that you'd like to say? And I can think of a million things. Every time I try to write it down, though, I cry. Jake is where the forces of nature need him. But I guess the tears are for his family and all of us who are going to miss him and all the good his potential offered this world. When we were first at SRB, the Haldeman's were one of our first close connections. Dylan and Zach became friends, and Donovan and Jake became inseparable. Myself, Eileen, Don, and boys shared a love of camping. Wendy, not so much. But she did love when we went camping. As time passes and circumstances change, the dynamics of friendships shift as well. And in recent years, our interactions have been more on social media than in person. Following Jake, you'd see that on many occasions, he selflessly put himself out there in tough situations. I truly believe that toughness was fostered on those early camping trips. One trip I can remember, we were up at Worthington State Forest, and we had gone out for a little hike. And the older boys had stayed back at the campground. And they kept calling us on the walkie-talkies, it was walkie-talkies then, not the cell phones, and saying there's a bear in our campsite. We, of course, thought they were just yanking our chain, and Jake was with us, so Don handed him his Bowie knife. He said, Jake, head back and take care of the bear. Jake didn't think twice about it. He marched through the campground. Now, after he left, we're thinking, gee, what do you think if somebody encounters this little kid with a Bowie knife? And sure enough, they did not, the bear, Jake, and the Bowie knife did not come into the same space at the same time. Or I'm relatively certain we would have been eating bear burger. Because Jake would have taken the bear on. But there really was a bear in the campsite, and the bear ended up breaking the window of my car and grabbing a bag of bagels. We got back in time to see her behind, crawling out the window with bagels in her mouth. Yeah, like I said, I have some bullet points, so I'm gonna, I clearly, some of the trips we went on would be in colder weather, and I clearly remember, like it was yesterday, looking over, seeing Jake covered in mud, one shoe off, one shoe on, and snow on the ground. And I said, Don, do you know that Jake is walking around with one shoe off? And Don was, and he was at those, Don, the sigh, the raised eyebrow, and and that was that. Like, Jake managed to walk along with one shoe off and one shoe on, and he did figure out at some point probably to put the shoe back on. The camping trips are just, and I got to see Ann Chambers, and we were on a trip at I believe it was French Creek State Park, and Jacob fell early in the trip and smacked his arm on a rock. And the next day we were going to go canoeing. Jake said, my arm hurts. Do you want to go canoeing? Yes, I want to go canoeing. So Jake canoed all day long. We finished the trip. Monday came. Jake was in school. Tuesday, Wednesday, through the week, there was Jake. The following week, Jake shows up with a cast on his arm. I said, Jake, what happened? I broke my arm. Really? How'd that happen? On our camping trip a week ago. So Jake paddled the canoe, went through the entire week. Arm still was feeling a little funny, so I think Wendy finally took him to the doctor. Sure enough, his arm was broken. So there's some toughness, right? There's where it got him, early on. And then I have one last Jake story. We had a birthday party, and we had set up a slip and slide in the front yard. And most of the kids had left, and Donovan's better friends were still hanging around. There were a couple of them. All of a sudden, I look out the window, and I yell, Eileen, they can't be doing this. And there is Jacob, belly down on a slip and slide in the front yard, bare butt in the air. Jake had decided that naked slip and sliding would be a good idea. So he definitely, Jake had a.
In fairness, he was fun.
Jake had, a mind of his own, and he did what he thought he'd like to do. And but the whole, I think, when I saw him, Eileen saw him at Mayfair. I saw him when he was teaching here because I still volunteered for a couple of things. And Jake walked up, and I put my hand out to give him a handshake, and of course a handshake wasn't good enough, and I got that great big Jacob hug, and other than that, we interact on the Phillies and Eagles, and man, it's just unbelievable. It was unbelievable. So that's my stories. Thank you, and I am so sorry.
Could I have Marion and John?
But don't stand.
Well,
Can't take you anywhere.
is this good?
No.
Here.
Never this way.
We try this.
I can move it.
We're there. All right. John wrote this great funny piece, and I've been thinking about Jake a lot, and I just put a few words together. Mountain heart, snow flies, Philly cheers still echo loud, justice in his soul. Jake's light never fades. In each act of love we see the best kind of man.
Back in the 90s, when our children were students at SRB, Marion and I joined a new community. It wasn't just our child's education, and parent-teacher meetings, but also developed a social circle of parents, students, and teachers. At one of the school's picnics, Marion said, "John, you have to meet Wendy, she's great." My initial reaction was, I don't want to meet anybody new. Anyway, it turned out that Wendy was irreverent, not very PC, and a lot of fun. We got along just fine, and she understood me more than most. Later, we met Don, Zach, and Jake. This eventually developed into a friendship that presented the opportunity for Jake, Don, and I to take flights on Sunday mornings for breakfast. Some say to get closer to God. It was very rewarding for me to introduce Jake to flying, as it was clear that he had a keen interest in aviation and surprisingly good touch for the controls of the aircraft. Unlike some who just look at it as a slow ride. It was my pleasure to watch Jake take interest in my hobby. Later, Don and I decided to take Jake and my daughter to learn a snowboard. Poor Jake was terrible. He was really bad. I felt sorry, but he didn't seem to know or didn't care, but he just couldn't do it. He really couldn't do it. He didn't care that younger, smaller kids were sailing past him while he was failing and tumbling up down the mountain, mostly on his butt. I would have been humiliated and quit. I don't know if it was his build or coordination, but in my head I was saying, dude, give it up. Thankfully, I kept my mouth shut and he continued to take lessons religiously every week and just wouldn't give up. I even felt bad for Don investing all the time and money, but Jake seemed to enjoy it. Well, Jake taught me, an adult, a lesson about perseverance, a lesson I still value today, and should learn much earlier in life. He only figured it out, mastered it, became an instructor. Thanks for the lesson, Jake. Over the years, we've lost touch, but I know that Jake's determination, his attitude, that I don't care what they think, and maybe his stubbornness has opened doors and experiences in his life that most would have never attempted. Thank you.
Ira? Who's Ira?
How's everybody doing? I just got a short couple stories and a couple of things to say about it. So me and Jake became friends in 7th grade. Believe it was through playing football, unlimited, Coach Justin. The boys in the back right there, they know about that. Getting to know each other, we learned that my mom and Don had known each other for like our whole lives and just never known it. I told her I was going to meet up with my friend Jake Haldeman, and she goes, no, I told her I was going to meet up with my friend Jake Haldeman, and she goes, is his dad named Donald again? It's like, I don't know, I'll find out. Come to find out, his dad name is Donald. But from that point, me and Jake became like super close friends. Jake was one of the most genuine and funniest people I ever met. He would take me on adventures all throughout Swarthmore, places like Alligator Rock and the ruins and down to the creek over here at Swarthmore College. Also, the Whisper Bench was one of our favorite places too. He would come to hang out with me in media and at my mom's house. We would hang out all the time and just have a good time laughing. One of my favorite memories was with Jake was during senior week in Wildwood. Me and Jake were walking down the street, some kids, senior week kids, drunk, rowdy. They start talking trash. So Jake goes, what do you say to my brother? Yeah, you better keep walking. And that was just how he was. Like, he was the most gentle, craziest giant you could ever meet. But I looked at him, I'm like, this dude's like more than my friend. I was like, this dude's really my brother. And he said that at that moment. Another thing I knew me and Jake were meant to be friends forever, pretty much. Because funny thing, I moved to Jersey. He calls me. He goes, "Hey, what town you live in?" I told him Tom's River. He goes, "Guess what? My grandma lives in Manchester. Manchester and Tom's River are literally right next to each other." So he would come down, he would come visit me. We would hang out at my in-laws by the pool or go fishing. And another, my favorite memory of him, he brought his kayak down so we could go fishing. So me, Jake, and all this fishing gear. Say the least, I was terrified. I said to Jake, "You sure we're going to be good on this, bro? Not for nothing. Me and you is about 600 pounds a man. We got another 80 to 100 pounds worth of gear." He looks at me and goes, "Bro, you think I would do this if we weren't good?" I said, "All right, I'll trust you." And literally, me and him were out on that kayak for like 6.5, 7 hours fishing. Safe to say, another fun fact, I bought a kayak like maybe a year later. The last time I seen him was, I want to say last summer. He came down, we hung out by the pool, and he was telling me he was going through some health issues and things. And I told him that I loved him and to take care of himself. When I got the call from my mom that he passed, I was truly hurt. I just thought about me and Jake's brotherhood that we built over the years, and just to think a kid from Swarthmore and a kid from Chester becoming the best of friends, two completely different worlds, it's like you would never think would happen. I will always hold him dear to my heart, and I will always miss him. I love you, Jake.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ira. We do have a few minutes. If anybody would like to raise their hand and come up and share Jake's story. Come on up, Latine. I taught this beautiful girl in kindergarten too.
5 years ago, when I was in 4th grade, we had just been allowed to leave our houses because of COVID. Jake, I was lucky enough to have him as my assistant, and he was truly an incredible man. We had this thing called MC overnight, and it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I am terrified of the dark. And he sat with me until I fell asleep the whole night, and that was just truly so special to me. He told me that everything was going to be okay, and that moved me, that made me feel like I had someone looking over me, and I felt like he kept me safe, and I knew truly that he cared about everything. Dawn and Wendy and Zach and Jake are my next door neighbors. Our dogs run to the fence we share every single day. Every time they see each other, the fence is shaking the entire time from all the jumping. And about a few years ago during COVID, we saw Jake outside with a humongous tire and a sledgehammer. And he was flipping this like insanely heavy tire around, hammering it with a sledgehammer. And my grandparents were here and they were like, "Oh my God, that's Jake." And Sunday, his dog, they were exactly the same. They were so incredible. They were both incredible souls, and I love Jake so much, and I love you so much, and may you rest in peace.
Anybody else? Mo, come on up here.
Hi, everybody. So my story, quick stories about Jake. My favorite place to be in the world is with kids, Thank you to the Haldeman family and the family, they're the first families I met here, and I never felt more, like family right away. And the boys, it was through summer camp. And one of the first things that Jake showed me, not because he was saying it, is that he trusted me. And I like to challenge and he liked to challenge, so he would jump to me from the wood climber. You know, and that's just something you can't say it, you know, like it just happens. And then my other part was Jake was like a Tonka truck, much like my daughter. And one day he was running across the field and I heard this sound and I was like, oh, he's not okay. You know, he found the one rock in the field to fall on with his leg open, you know, and Donna, when you guys were so calm, I was like, oh my God. And then my last one is I loved that Jake appreciated my silly sense of humor, and he did too. No matter how old he was, even when he was here as an assistant, I would say, hey, Jake, what's shaking? And he would say, me.
Thanks, Maureen. Anybody else? I like the switch.
Hi, my name is Tyler Beebe. I'm probably one of the least qualified people to be up here speaking about Jake, but I figured, you know, that's kind of what made him so great, was that someone as far removed as myself had been touched by Jake in so many different ways as well throughout growing up. I probably met Jake around 4th grade, I believe it was, playing baseball. It was the first time I played baseball, and Jake, never being small at any point in his life, was a pretty intimidating character to sit on the bench next to. And I just remember looking over at him, and gentle giant's probably the right way to describe him in certain aspects, but he wasn't physically gentle by any stretch of the imagination. So I was pretty diminutive, and I remember him looking over at me with his big goofy grin. And, you know, I'm a nervous, just anxious kid. I don't think Jake was ever nervous or anxious a second in his life. And he turned and just punched me as hard as he could in my arm. I'll never forget how bad that hurt. And it was one of many times over the next couple of years. And he could get you right above the knee and leg. Just, you wouldn't be able to walk for another couple of minutes. But he was a man of many juxtapositions, you know, giant, physical, but truly one of the sweetest, most caring people you'll ever meet. Probably to his own detriment at times. And very recently, I had found out, I think he had worked at the 911 center or had been involved. And my dad, who I don't talk to all that much, but works over there, reached out probably for the first time in 6 months. He said, Jake Haldeman, you know him? Yeah, Dad, you know him too, you coached him. But he said, yeah, no, he's over here, but he's raising a little bit of hell. And I said, yeah, I'm chuckling myself. I bet so. I know what it's like over there. And Jake didn't suffer any sort of intolerance, any sort of inequality. He was such a genuine human being. And for that to ruffle the feathers that it did, I knew at the end of the day that there's probably no better way to describe the type of person he was than hearing that from my dad. And I felt compelled to come up here and say that, again, Jake was so incredibly thoughtful, kind, gentle, in certain ways, that I'll always remember. All my time with him growing up from 7th grade or 4th grade all the way up through middle school, all the way up through high school, and my best friend Dan in the back, me and my buddies, you know, meeting them for the first time, coming from school, and Ira playing football with you guys is some of the best memories I'll ever have, and I'm very grateful that Jake was a part of those. So thank you guys.
Maud, did you want to come up?
Hi. So my name is Maud. Jake and I went to preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. We graduated high school together. He's the only person in my life I can say that about. And I mean, you've listened to all of these speeches. I love how many of these photos are of him with leg injuries. That was constant. And how many people have spoken to this big heart, this just complete generosity. We were friends in elementary school because there were like 8 of us in our grade. And then in middle school, we would have class together and I'd be like, oh yeah, hi Jake. And people would be like, how do you know him? We were in very different social circles, but he was always a person you could turn to and know that he was there and he was going to be Jake and he was going to treat you the way that Jake treated you, which was just indescribable but wonderful. And since I just have realized how many of the stories of my life feature Jake Haldeman. Like, every little thing of, he was the first person who told me they were gonna make a Shrek movie. Okay, so I think of Shrek, I think of Jake Haldeman. Like, in high school, he polled everyone in our class, in our history class, and said, do you say Swarthmore or do you say Swarthmore? And it was split down the middle. And I say that to people constantly when they ask me how to pronounce Swarthmore. I'm like, well, in 9th grade, my friend Jake did a poll, and it was dead split. It was just, he was a wonderful person to know and feel like you were gonna know forever. And this, we were not in touch, particularly after high school, in and out, saw him. We both came back here after college and taught, though at different times. And just to watch him have the same realizations I was having about how much this place meant to me and wanting to teach that. And then watching him do that, because he was not always a kid who we were like, oh yeah, he's gonna be a great teacher when he grows up. But of course he was. And of course he had this incredible openness and I don't know, but it's just, it's so, I don't know, and it's wild to look around here and look at all of these people and how many of you that I know, just because we're all community and family around this wonderful guy who just, I can't believe he's in here. And I don't know how to end this, but I just wanted to say, it was really special knowing him in school for all of those years. Yes. Now I hand it to our kindergarten teacher and our teacher.
Thanks, Maud. Anybody else? We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more.
Hi, I am Don's sister, Jake's aunt. I'm Casey. And this story, this thought of Jake, he was just so incredible. But he had so many passions, but music was one of his many passions. And I would win free concert tickets on the radio. And I would always call Jake and I think he wouldn't want to go to this, So one time in particular, I won tickets to Peter Frampton, like 5-6 years ago. And he's like, I said, Jake, would you be interested in these tickets? They're free, Oh yeah, I'll go. So he met me at Timothy's in Westchester, where I live in Westchester, and nobody was in there, and I was talking to the manager, and my back was toward the door, and she was facing the door, and she said, so what are you coming in here so early for? And I said, oh, I'll meet my nephew, and we're talking, and all of a sudden her face drops, and she just looked at the door, and we're in the middle of a conversation. I went, what's the matter? And I turned around, and here Jake's coming through the door, and the sunlight was just behind him, and he looked like this big guy coming in with the beard and the hair, and I said, oh, that's my nephew. So he ended up sitting with us and having lunch, and I said, Jacob, why are you interested in Peter Frampton? And because that was from my college days in the 70s, Frampton comes by. And he goes, the drummer. It's the drummer. He's the best drummer ever. I'm like, the drummer? Who's the drummer? You know? But Jake was so into music, he knew drummers from the 70s. And it just amazed me. And we just had the best time. And then after he went to the concert, he's like, the tickets sucked, by the way. But the drummer was excellent. And yeah, so that was his memory. The concert was not Peter Frampton, but the drummer. But he's such a, like everybody says, he was a gentle giant and a heart as big as the world. And we're going to miss him a lot. I love you, Jake.
I think we should stop with that one. That was lovely, unless anybody else would like to speak. Somebody's waiting.
My name's Dan. I also went to SRV and went to Strathaven, so I knew Jake for a long time. I remember my mom always used to say, I always come home and she'd always say, what did Jake hurt this time? I distinctly remember we went to play football with some of our friends in 6th grade, and it was Jake that didn't make it tackle once the parents were gone. Because that's just Jake. And I did fall out of touch with him, but I think what really describes him as who he was is we had someone that we knew passed a couple years ago. And I hadn't talked to him in years, but I remember him reaching out to me just to make sure I was okay, because he knew that he was one of my friends. And it's tough to know he's gone, but that's just who he was. He wanted me to tell him that I was doing okay and make sure that I was. So I'm gonna miss him a lot. He's just an amazing person. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy and Don want you to know that there are carry-out containers if you'd like to take a sandwich home. They don't want to take all those subs home. The flowers in the vases on the table, and the photographs, if you see one, that means a lot to you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Wendy doesn't want you to think you have to leave. You can still eat now. The room is yours. Thank you.